Okay, we're here at the United Nations headquarters, and it's great to meet with Melissa Fleming, the Undersecretary General for Global Information. So, one of the things that's been going making the rounds, let's start with that which a lot of people will recognize, that is information integrity. In terms of the integrity of the information that a lot of people share, there's been questions about it because of the issue of fake news and all that. And I know that United Nations, especially your department, has been working on this. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely urgent to work on it because everywhere we go in the world, we see that our information ecosystems are polluted with mis and disinformation and hate speech. And this is polarizing societies. It's people are losing trust in institutions, in media, and they're finding also even their own voices being attacked. And so we really need to address this phenomenon of information integrity. We call it, we turn it into a positive that we have put out a blueprint at the UN for healthy information ecosystems in which authoritative, trusted information is elevated over lies and hate.
Okay, so let's drill down a little bit more. Let's start with the personal information. In terms of what a lot of people consume today, they consume from social media. What kind of blueprint are you looking at? One, for the personal information that people consume, and then two, the polarizing factor more often than not turns out to be more like politicians when it comes to period of elections. So the kind of information that they disseminate is quite worrying. So for both sides, the personal and the political, what will be your blueprint and suggestions?
Well, I mean, disinformation has always existed. It's just that with the latest technology, social media platforms, the ability to weaponize disinformation, to supercharge it so it's everywhere, is so much stronger. And this is something that we have to address. So individuals, their voices need to be, have more of a possibility to be educated and elevated. Users need to know how their data is being used. And, governments should refrain from spreading disinformation. And social media platforms also have a responsibility to ensure that the information that is causing harm is not the information that is dominating. We'd like to see it not circulating at all.
Okay, I'll come back to data integrity and misinformation and disinformation, but let's look at some parts of the continent, especially Africa. When you look at Africa, there are areas that information is just not getting out. Like Sudan, for example, the problem there, News Central, we've said we're going to make an effort to unearth some of the things going on in Sudan. What is UN doing to make sure that the rest of the world don't leave Sudan behind until it gets to that catastrophe that we often see in some other countries?
It is a catastrophe already, and we are so concerned that Sudan's war is being forgotten by the international media, by the governments, by international donors, and the people are suffering so much. We are in places as the UN where journalists are unable to access because it's too dangerous, and we are able to distribute video and photo and stories from the ground. We're trying to do that through our UN news service and also our video feed. That said, we encourage media like yours and others around the world to keep an eye on what's happening in Sudan, expose this horrible war and the voices that are trying, first of all, just to reach people, to keep them alive, and to try to get peace to be negotiated once and for all.
People do say from time to time that it is when you tell the story of one man, that's when it resonates with a lot of people. What story can you tell us about, let's say, for example, Sudan again, that will resonate with people and make them realize that this is a story that should not be forgotten? Sudan is struggling at the moment.
Yes, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and you in journalism know this, that people connect. There's a saying, statistics are human beings with the tears dried off. So if we just put out people as statistics, Mass suffering is very hard to absorb for people, but the story of individuals, how they are struggling, how they are surviving, their resilience, their hope, and their incredible courage, those are the stories that we need to tell. And there are so many of them, and it's on us at the UN and it's on journalists to find them, to give humanity back to this war and to make people realize, that we need to go and save lives and to end this, mass suffering and horrific horror story that is the war in Sudan.
I will say, because I know for a fact that UN Global Information, your department is doing some incredibly wonderful job, and I commend your work. But in terms of collaboration with media organizations and agencies, how easy has that been, or how fruitful has it been to enable you disseminate information to reach the areas that it need to be reached? How useful has that been?
Well, we have very proud to have the STG Media Compact. I believe you're in your news organization is a member, and we have 400 other members from around the world, and we work with these media organizations to deliver information and content and messaging so that you're able to cover better the issues that the UN is trying to cover. So it's an extremely important partnership for us. We also work, try to bring journalists to places where the UN is operating. We give countless interviews to UN organizations, and as I said, distribute video from different parts of the UN system to television stations around the world who are unable to travel to the places that we go. We need media partners. We can't do it alone. The world is big. The quest and the thirst for knowledge is huge, and so we can, if the more media partners we have, the better we will and more effective we will be.
Okay, now let me ask you about one of the areas that creates concern for the media as well. That's a lot of government officers and presidents of nations come to United Nations General Assembly. They say a lot of fantastic things, but when it comes to collaborating with the United Nations to make sure that you see some results, no matter how small, you tend to think that they don't really deliver. What's been your experience? How difficult has it been for you in global information to get connection with government to deliver results in the way that you would like to see?
Well, sometimes we also can't operate alone without governments. We do have country operations in so many countries around the world. Of course, the government has to grant us that permission to operate, and then cooperate with us in many other ways so that we can deliver. We come in to fill a segment that the government needs us to fulfill. And so, I think on one hand, we are filling a gap. On the other hand, we are also advising the government on the SDGs and how to progress in all of these dimensions to create better governance, reduce inequalities, to improve quality education, to take action on climate change, to reduce tensions in society. Those are the kind of advisory services that we can offer. We can attract development actors and investments in transitions. So I think that hopefully governments see us as win-win, and that we also, have an influence on governments to be their best selves.
Okay, so on the issue of data integrity, I know that you've mentioned that there's a lot of work that your team and other teams within the United Nations have put together to try and work on reports that will help to enhance data integrity and create a level of education for those who are likely to be worried about it. In terms of promoting the information that the United Nations has, how easy has that been for you, and what are you doing to make it a lot more accessible both to the journalists and to the public around the world?
Well, I mean, I have to confess that a lot of UN information is in the form of 40-page reports and kind of dense graphics and writing. So it's my job and the job of my teams is to translate a lot of that heavy and important information into accessible content, depending on who our audience is. So you try to make content that works for journalists, as well as for the general public. We use our social media platforms and deploy them to reach millions of people, and so we have to condense sometimes very large intellectual pieces of work or big findings or long statements into bite-sized pieces of content that will allow people and attract people in. We also use our own people. The Secretary General and all of his senior leadership, including me, are always available to do interviews, to talk to student groups, to go to universities, to meet with business leaders. So we try to open up the UN. People relate more to humans than they do to institutions. So that's what we try to do.
So when it comes to people perceiving United Nations, especially global information, as being impartial, how easy is it to not get very passionate about some of the sufferings that you see around the world and driving that message home in the best way possible? How easy has it been?
Hard. I mean, I think there is a time when it is appropriate to show passion, compassion, outrage, and emotion. If you're operating in the field of war where people are suffering and dying. And we do that. But behind that, there will be the facts about what is happening and content that is based on what our colleagues in the field are finding out. So it is hard to separate I don't think all of us are humans, and we deal in the most difficult situations in the world. And we're not just going to reach people without showing facts. I know many journalists who are working in war zones who also express their horror. The way they describe what's happening is factual, but that description paints a picture that is something that the readers or the viewers will never forget. And that is really important. We have to reach people's hearts, not just people's heads.
So tell us one story, because I like stories. I'm a storyteller, I'm a journalist, and I love stories. Tell us one story of one or two incidents that you know that when leaders across the world or even just ordinary people hear, there will be a likelihood that they will do a rethink when it comes to issues concerning that particular story. It could be anywhere in the world. It could be in Gaza, it could be in Israel, it could be in Sudan, it could be in Somalia.
I'll never forget meeting a young teenage boy named Hani. He was from Syria and he had recently fled to Lebanon. He was living in a muddy tent. And I asked him during my visit, we were sitting together drinking tea, and I asked him what I ask all refugees who flee war: what did you take? What did you take when the bombs were falling and you had to quickly leave your home? And he got up and went to the other side of the tent and came back with a document covered in silk. And then he uncovered the silk and showed me what he was holding, and it was his high school diploma. And he said, I took my high school diploma because my life depended on it. Without education, I am nothing. And with that story, we were able to, which I then told, and the Canadian government was very attracted to it. And through their resettlement program, they were able to bring Hani and his family to Canada, where he not only went to university, but then became the youth advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It's a story that there is the horrors of war in it. There is the sense of hopelessness around displacement, but that resilience and that drive. And then there is just, the amazing human story of overcoming. And there's so many of those stories, and I try to find them and to tell them to get people to care, and to get governments and others to act.
Okay, finally, let me ask you this. I know that a lot of people have lost hope in some part of the world because they can't seem to find a way forward because of the level of trauma and devastation in some part of the world. How do you manage to keep hope alive, and what do you say to people as a member of staff of United Nations that when you go to the field and you see them, what do you say to them to keep their hope alive?
Talk to the people, have conversations, sit with them, listen to their stories, and ask them what they overcame, what they survived, what they hoped for, what what their children mean to them, and what their dreams are. From that, you can derive incredible inspiration because people are so much stronger than you think they are, and what they can overcome and what they can give back is incredibly inspiring.
Melissa Fleming, thank you very much and well done with the work that United Nations, especially Global Information, is doing. We wish you the very best.
Thank you so much for having me and your interest in our work and communications.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. All
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah, thank you.